In those moments when the fabric of existence seems to unravel, global upheavals, ecological disasters, social fragmentations, you stand there, striving to maintain balance as everything collapses around you. But ask yourself, how much longer can your spirit endure? How many more tremors before uncertainty consumes your core? Pause. Breathe deeply. There exists a path not merely to survive these tempests but to emerge from them invincible. Life has never granted humanity easy passage. History bears witness each era marked by turmoil, devastation, and profound uncertainty. Yet the ancient Stoic philosophers understood something that few grasp: we cannot prevent the storm, but we can master the art of walking through hurricanes unbroken. The principles you'll discover today will teach you to confront fear, anxiety, and despair with unwavering fortitude. Listen carefully. Regardless of what challenges approach from beyond your control, these teachings will forge within you a strength that cannot be diminished. When shadows lengthen across our world, take heart, you possess the capacity to grow more powerful. Are you prepared to become indestructible? Let us begin. But first, allow me to share a story that illuminates the power of becoming unshakable. Dawn had barely broken when Nikolai emerged from his mountain cabin. The biting Siberian air cut through his layers, but such discomfort was merely background noise to a man who had spent 3 generations tending to his beloved reindeer herd. Each day, through blizzards, summer droughts, or autumn winds, he ventured forth to guide his animals, his sole source of livelihood in this remote wilderness. This morning carried an unfamiliar stillness. Some primal instinct within him recognized the absence of normal sounds. Nikolai quickened his pace toward the valley where his herd typically grazed. Upon arrival, his heart turned to stone. The nearby dam had ruptured overnight, transforming the once verdant meadow into a muddy wasteland. What had been a thriving herd of 40 reindeer now lay scattered, lifeless bodies carried away by the merciless current. His animals, his livelihood, his future, all swept away in a single night's catastrophe. Nikolai collapsed onto the sodden earth, fists clenched in helpless rage. How could he possibly recover? This wasn't merely a setback, it was obliteration. He buried his weathered face in calloused hands, allowing despair to crash through him like the very floodwaters that had destroyed everything. "What now, Nikolai?" he whispered, his voice barely audible above the gentle gurgle of receding waters. He returned to his village, head bowed beneath the weight of failure. Some neighbors offered pitying glances, others averted their eyes entirely. Without his reindeer, there would be no meat to trade, no hides to sell, no milk for sustenance. He faced a future of destitution, dependent on the charity of an already struggling community. Then, from the depths of memory, emerged his grandmother's wisdom, a woman forged by decades of Siberian hardship. When Arctic winds tear through the taiga, only the pines with deepest roots remain standing. Don't curse the blizzard, Nikolai. Learn to find shelter within it. Nikolai drew a deep breath. He examined his work-worn hands and sun-leathered skin. Was this truly his end, or merely another brutal test along life's journey? He stood tall. The reindeer were gone, but something infinitely more valuable remained: generations of knowledge passed down through his bloodline. He understood the patterns of migration, could read weather changes days before they arrived, knew how to survive where others perished. The initial weeks tested every fiber of his being. He labored for other herders, exchanging expertise for modest compensation. He bartered with village merchants, trading specialized knowledge for essential supplies. When the unforgiving winter descended, rather than surrendering, he invested his meager savings in 4 sickly reindeer rejected by other herders. While others dismissed these animals as worthless, Nikolai nursed them with patience born from generations of experience. When spring's renewal arrived, so too came an unexpected miracle. His small herd had survived, stronger than anyone anticipated. What began as desperate salvation transformed into unexpected opportunity. Within 3 years, his reindeer numbered more than before the flood, each animal healthier and more productive than those in neighboring herds. When asked how he accomplished such a transformation, Nikolai would smile with the serenity of someone who had danced with disaster and emerged victorious. "You cannot command the rivers to stop flowing," he would say, "but you can decide whether their currents destroy you or carry you to unexpected shores. So tell me, friend, when life's torrents rage around you, will you be swept away, or will you become unbreakable? Today I bring you timeless Stoic wisdom to fortify yourself against misfortune, to overcome life's most challenging moments. Stay with me, and you'll discover how to master every obstacle life places in your path. Pain doesn't aim to destroy you, it strives to teach you. It burns, sears, and cuts through you like a merciless blade. It arrives unannounced, without compassion, the loss of someone cherished, betrayal from the least expected source, or that devastating failure that strikes directly at your core. In those moments, your only desire is for the pain to vanish. I understand completely, it's fundamentally human to seek escape from suffering. But today you'll discover something profound. Pain does not exist to break you, it exists to strengthen you. The Stoics taught that suffering is inevitable, but the meaning we assign to that suffering remains entirely in our control. Like fire that tempers steel or flowing water that polishes rough stone, every challenge you face has the potential to increase your resilience and create someone who cannot be broken. It is not because circumstances are difficult that we dare not venture, it is because we dare not venture that circumstances seem difficult, taught Seneca. Consider an athlete recovering from injury. She can interpret it as career-ending catastrophe or as an opportunity to develop greater mental fortitude and return stronger than before. A Stoic chooses the latter path. She doesn't ask, "Why me?" but rather, "What can this situation teach me?" Pain resembles a tempest. You can curse the thunderstorms, run frantically seeking shelter, and end up drenched regardless, or you can raise your head, acknowledge the storm will pass, and learn to walk through it with dignity intact. Consider how you would respond if tomorrow brought news of your termination. You might initially feel devastated. Anxiety would likely consume your thoughts. Fear of an uncertain future might paralyze you. Frustration could convince you everything is ruined. But ask yourself a different question. How would a Stoic face this situation? Instead of drowning in despair, they would observe the circumstances with clarity, recognizing that the only constant in existence is change, and clinging to what has already disappeared only multiplies suffering. They would ask, what opportunity lies hidden within this seeming catastrophe? How might I transform this situation to my advantage? Perhaps it signals the moment to launch that entrepreneurial venture, explore a different career path, or investigate possibilities previously unconsidered. Marcus Aurelius expressed it plainly: if pain exists in your body, it belongs to the body. If pain exists in your mind, it belongs to the mind. And you remain master of both. How powerful is that insight? You might wonder how Stoics endure suffering with such unwavering composure. Let me share some of their secret practices. First, transform your perspective. Rather than asking, "Why is this happening to me?" ask, "What is this happening for?" Seek the hidden lesson within each difficulty. Second, don't resist the inevitable. Fighting against pain only intensifies its impact. Accept its presence, not through resignation, but by taking control of how you choose to confront it. Third, take action despite discomfort. Don't await the absence of pain before moving forward. True strength emerges through pain, not in its absence. Pain is not your adversary. It is the sculptor's chisel shaping your character, the blacksmith's hammer forging your spirit. So when life next strikes you with full force, don't ask, "When will this end?" Instead, ask, "Who will I become because of this?" Because the answer is clear, you will become unbreakable. The only hand you require is the one at the end of your arm. When circumstances grow complicated, it's natural to search for salvation elsewhere. We hope someone will arrive with answers, solutions, or assistance we desperately need. But ask yourself, how often has that help failed to materialize? How many times have you waited for others to address what only you could resolve? The harsh yet liberating truth: in your darkest moments, no rescue party is coming. The only hand you truly need is the one attached to your arm. Imagine becoming lost in dense wilderness. You've wandered for hours as daylight fades and temperature plummets. Stumbling over a concealed route, you injure your knee. Fear threatens to overwhelm you. Your mind screams that escape is impossible, that surrender is inevitable, that your fate is sealed within this forest. But then you breathe deeply. You examine your injury and determine that, despite the pain, movement remains possible. You activate your flashlight, analyze the terrain, and resolve to advance with deliberate steps. You recall that moss typically grows on northern sides of trees and that water flows downward. Rather than remaining immobile awaiting rescue, you adapt, think clearly, and utilize available resources to save yourself. While this scenario may be hypothetical, its lesson applies universally. When circumstances deteriorate, you must prepare to rely on your own capabilities. You needn't imagine extreme situations, consider daily challenges. A household pipe ruptures, an appliance malfunctions, or your vehicle refuses to start. The simplest response is awaiting someone else's intervention, surrendering control to others. Certainly, this approach seems logical, you're not a plumber or mechanic. But consider an alternative perspective. What if, instead of waiting, you invested time in discovering potential solutions? Learn, attempt, fail, and try again. The objective isn't necessarily fixing the immediate problem but ensuring your increased competence when facing future challenges. What would Emperor Aurelius do if his bath pipes became obstructed while his servants were unavailable? Would he endure days without bathing, lamenting his circumstances? Absolutely not. He would neither complain nor remain passive. He would act, adapt, and maintain his composure throughout. He himself declared, "You possess power over your mind, not external events. Realize this truth, and you shall discover strength." Difficulties won't disappear, but you determine how to confront them. Self-sufficiency resembles learning to navigate turbulent waters. If you surrender to currents, you'll sink. If you thrash wildly in panic, you'll exhaust yourself. But maintaining calm while seeking optimal pathways forward ensures you'll remain afloat. Apply this approach to life's challenges. Rather than panicking, evaluate what you can accomplish with available resources in present circumstances. The essential strategy is assuming responsibility for your circumstances. No one else bears responsibility for resolving your problems. If you await external rescue from difficulties, you'll never achieve independence. But learning self-reliance guarantees freedom. Where should you begin? Develop diverse skills. Greater knowledge reduces dependency on others. Learn effective problem-solving, emotional management, and resourcefulness. This doesn't prohibit seeking assistance when appropriate, but ensures you won't require it to progress forward. Most importantly, eliminate excuses. Don't await perfect conditions or ideal timing. Act despite fear, doubts, and uncertainty, but act. Action remains the sole method for escaping current circumstances. The next time you feel helpless, examine your hands. They have constructed, worked, created, and possess the strength to carry you forward. Everything required already exists within you. The question remains, will you utilize it? Motivation is a luxury, discipline is essential. I would wager everything that when your favorite series becomes available or friends invite you for enjoyable activities, no hesitation exists. You simply participate. But what if I suggested awakening at 5 a.m. for training? My friend, that's an entirely different proposition, isn't it? You can almost sense excuses materializing. What about studying after an exhausting workday? Does equal enthusiasm exist then? This highlights our fundamental challenge. We move effortlessly when motivation propels us, but once motivation dissipates, everything feels impossibly difficult. Understand this truth: if you act only when inclination strikes, nothing truly significant will ever materialize. Motivation resembles fireworks, brilliant illumination, momentary spectacle, then disappearance into darkness. Dependence on motivation traps you in endless cycles of enthusiastic beginnings and frustrating abandonments. But something exists that never extinguishes, something infinitely more powerful: discipline. If something remains bearable, then bear it. Cease complaining, advised Marcus Aurelius. That represents the critical distinction. Motivation encourages action when feelings are positive, discipline demands action regardless of emotional state. It's not awaiting perfect conditions, it's advancing despite challenging terrain. Consider a novelist who writes exclusively when inspiration strikes. Perhaps one book emerges every decade, or none whatsoever. Now imagine a novelist who sits down daily to write, regardless of inspirational presence. That writer inevitably succeeds. This principle applies universally. Consider Olympic athletes. They don't awaken questioning whether training feels appealing. They understand success doesn't depend on emotional states but on unwavering commitment. Discipline separates achievement from perpetual dreaming. How does one transition from motivational dependency to disciplined living? First, abandon pursuit of perfect moments. They don't exist. If training is your goal, train. If learning is your objective, study. Emotional inclination remains irrelevant, begin regardless. Second, honor commitments to yourself. Never disappoint yourself. Self-discipline fundamentally concerns self-respect. Would you abandon a friend during crucial appointments? Then why abandon yourself? Third, transform internal dialogue. Replace "I don't feel inclined" with "this represents who I am." It's not optional or negotiable, it constitutes your identity. The Stoics understood this principle profoundly. Approach everything as though it were your final action in life, taught Marcus Aurelius. If you operated daily as though second chances didn't exist, imagine what you might accomplish. When next contemplating surrender, remember this: motivation might initiate your journey, but only discipline delivers you to the destination. Stop depending on fleeting fireworks. Construct an eternal flame. Life defies prediction. And that's perfectly acceptable. Have you ever meticulously planned a perfect day only to witness its complete disintegration within minutes? You awaken Saturday morning, excited about your rare day off. Every detail arranged: peaceful breakfast on your balcony, leisurely walk through the park, concluding with an engaging film from your watch list. Everything perfectly orchestrated. Then suddenly, catastrophe. A violent storm materializes seemingly from nowhere. Electricity fails throughout your neighborhood. Your perfect day dissolves before it begins. You hadn't anticipated this disruption, leaving you scrambling for alternatives. That's life's nature, profoundly unpredictable. It hurls unexpected situations toward you, forcing navigation in unforeseen directions. Here's the critical insight: the sooner you accept this reality, the sooner you'll develop capacity for handling whatever circumstances arise. If you perpetually expect events to unfold according to plan, you'll collapse at the first unexpected deviation. But learning to flow with unpredictability renders you unbreakable. The Stoics grasped this concept perfectly. Marcus Aurelius clarified, "Do not be troubled about the future, for should you reach it, you will arrive with the same reason you employ today." In other words, worrying about uncontrollable factors wastes precious energy. During his lifetime, Marcus Aurelius experienced wars, betrayals, and widespread plagues. Did he squander days lamenting circumstances diverging from his preferences? Certainly not. Instead, he concentrated on the singular element under genuine control: his attitude. When situations deviated from expectations, he adjusted his approach and continued advancing. Psychologist Lori Gottlieb, author of best-selling "Maybe You Should Talk to Someone," articulates clearly, uncertainty itself isn't problematic. The problem stems from our terror of lacking absolute control. We desire everything proceeding according to plans, as though existence owes us adherence to scripts we've composed in our minds. When reality diverges, boom, panic, frustration, and paralysis ensue. Here's the fascinating revelation: when you cease fighting unpredictability, you discover something remarkable. Relinquishing control paradoxically strengthens you. It enables adaptation, resilience against setbacks, and discovery of novel solutions instead of becoming trapped in perpetual complaints. Uncertainty isn't your enemy. Your resistance to it creates the genuine obstacle. Let's revisit your ruined day off. Power remains unavailable, storm conditions continue unabated, and your perfect plan lies shattered. Two options present themselves: remain angry, glaring through windows as though that might summon sunshine, or embrace this moment for different possibilities, perhaps reading that long-neglected novel or simply sitting peacefully, allowing the rainfall's rhythmic sounds to transport your imagination elsewhere. Notice the distinction? When everything seemingly collapses, the worst response is clinging to rigid expectations. Life rarely follows perfect scripts, so rather than frustration when expectations remain unfulfilled, accept the opportunity for improvisation. The more adaptable your responses, the more difficult it becomes for anything to break your spirit. This isn't advocating surrender but developing a mindset of continuous adaptation. Adaptation means moving intelligently to maintain forward progress. Consider water's properties: it conforms to any container, navigates around obstacles, always discovering pathways forward. When next confronting uncontrollable chaos, rather than anger or immobility, ask yourself, what possibilities exist within this situation? That question, simple yet powerful, will extract you from paralysis and illuminate new solutions. Life isn't scripted theater with fixed dialogue but improvisation where you determine appropriate responses for each emerging scene. Life defies prediction, and that's entirely acceptable. Learning adaptation without fragmentation enables overcoming life's hardest moments. Your most dangerous adversary resides in your mind. Imagine this scenario: you're walking along a street when suddenly you notice something unusual. You're not alone. Following closely behind is a miniature version of yourself. This version offers no encouragement. Instead, it whispers destructive messages. You'll certainly fail at this. Don't even attempt it. You'll only embarrass yourself. It's not some fictional villain, not your supervisor, not a toxic relationship. It's your own consciousness working against you. Herein lies the problem: when this voice assumes control, paralysis follows. External obstacles become unnecessary. You are already carrying them internally. But consider, when did this negative self-talk begin? We aren't born with such internal criticism. At some point, without conscious awareness, you began believing these destructive narratives. Epictetus, among the greatest Stoic philosophers, understood perfectly: we aren't affected by events themselves but by our interpretations of those events. His meaning? Failure doesn't cause your downfall, the story you construct about that failure does. Rejection doesn't halt your progress, your belief in personal inadequacy creates the barrier. The genuine problem isn't external circumstances but the internal battle raging within your mind. This isn't merely ancient philosophy. Psychologist Alvaro Pascual explains how uncontrolled thoughts sabotage us. The brain naturally gravitates toward negativity as a survival mechanism. But when this tendency becomes extreme, you essentially live within a mental prison, perceiving every mistake as catastrophic and every obstacle as insurmountable. Now imagine this negative internal voice attempting entry into an exclusive establishment, a venue permitting only thoughts that facilitate forward progress. Standing at entrance points is a Stoic security figure, arms crossed, blocking passage. Whenever negative thoughts approach, the Stoic declares, "Access denied," with that attitude. Here's the crucial question: if someone spoke to you using identical language you use internally, would their friendship continue? Absolutely not. So why permit your consciousness such treatment? If becoming unbreakable is your objective, if overcoming life's toughest challenges is your aim, the initial step requires transforming internal conversations. Let's implement practical strategies. First, when detecting negative thoughts, don't accept them as absolute truth. Replace them with constructive alternatives. This isn't about deception through empty positivity but reframing situations objectively. Stating, "I currently lack proficiency in this skill," differs significantly from, "I currently lack proficiency in this skill, but improvement remains possible." Second, address yourself as you would address your closest friend. If a friend confessed feeling like a failure, what response would you offer? You'd likely provide encouragement, remind them of past achievements. Yet regarding yourself, criticism often comes first. Change this pattern, become the supportive friend you require. Lastly, conduct mental detoxification. Evaluate daily consumption, social media showcasing seemingly perfect lives, news highlighting exclusively negative events, conversations with perpetually complaining individuals. All these elements feed that internal critic. Begin surrounding yourself with content and relationships that foster stronger mindsets. If your mind represents your greatest enemy, declare war against it, not through violence but strategy. With each thought you select, with each word you tell yourself. Ultimately, your beliefs about yourself determine how you confront life's challenges. If unbreakable spirit is your goal, first conquer your own mind. Sometimes victory comes, sometimes learning follows. Yes, my friend, difficult truths exist. Sometimes you triumph, other times you receive lessons never requested. I recognize that in such moments, it doesn't feel educational, it feels like direct assault against your pride, confidence, and motivation. But here's the secret: what appears as failure today might become the crucial element rendering you invincible tomorrow. Let me share how I personally learned this lesson. Some time ago, I maintained a serious long-term relationship. We discussed future plans, the home we would share, adventures we would experience together. Everything seemed perfectly aligned until suddenly, it wasn't. The relationship didn't simply dissolve, profound betrayal occurred. I lost not just the partnership but the entire future I had constructed mentally. Complete disorientation followed. Accepting that something receiving so much investment could simply disintegrate proved tremendously difficult. Frustration, anger, even conviction that trust had become permanently impossible for me. But gradually, I recognized that this catastrophe didn't represent conclusion but catalyst, the impetus needed for growth, for understanding aspects of myself, for recognizing that happiness cannot depend solely on single factors. Recognition didn't come easily, but now I understand it represented one of my most significant growth experiences. Reflecting on your own experiences, you likely recall similar stories, situations initially appearing as worst possible outcomes but eventually revealing lessons impossible to learn through other means. This pattern extends beyond personal anecdotes. Consider Niki Lauda, Formula One racing legend. During the 1976 German Grand Prix, he suffered catastrophic accident, suffering severe burns and lung damage. Doctors gave minimal survival chances. Yet merely 42 days later, he returned to racing. When asked how he overcame such trauma, he responded, "Setbacks teach me to be stronger. They teach me about my own limitations and help me grow beyond them." People achieving genuine success aren't those avoiding failure but those persisting until failure ceases being an option. Seneca clarified this centuries ago, "We suffer more through imagination than reality." Reflecting honestly, you likely spend considerable time assuming worst outcomes, believing single mistakes represent terminal disaster, that favorable outcomes become permanently impossible. But reality proves different. Failure provides information, nothing more. It's communication indicating, "This approach proved ineffective, try alternatives." It's not judgment or sentence, merely data. Science confirms this perspective. Neuroscientist Wendy Suzuki, author of Good Anxiety, demonstrates that every mistake triggers neural rewiring. New connections form, creativity centers activate, problem-solving mechanisms engage. Each failure essentially provides mental exercise, rendering you sharper, more intelligent, better prepared for future challenges. Consider sword-sharpening analogies. Without applying stone, without exposing the blade to wear, it becomes useless. But each sharpening, each refinement through precise pressure, creates stronger, more resilient, more effective weapons. Identical processes occur within you. Every setback, every mistake represents the stone that polishes you, preparing you for greater challenges. When next confronting disappointment, remember this perspective and leverage it advantageously. When situations deteriorate, adopt detective mindsets, not victim mentalities. Rather than interpreting events as personal attacks, analyze available evidence. What specifically failed? Where might improvement occur? A chef burning dishes doesn't conclude, "I'm catastrophically incompetent," but rather, "Next attempt requires reduced heat." Apply identical approaches to personal setbacks, trade emotional drama for strategic thinking. Instead of asking, "Why does this happen specifically to me?" ask, "How might I use this to my advantage?" Imagine losing employment. You could spend weeks in self-pity, or recognize it as indication that superior opportunities await discovery. The distinction between sinking or emerging stronger lies entirely in how you frame circumstances. Learn to perceive mistakes as recalculating GPS systems. Wrong turns don't terminate journeys, they simply require route adjustments. In life, you either win or learn. The only genuine failure occurs when surrender becomes your choice. My friend, you haven't traversed this far merely to abandon the path now. Patience creates invincibility. Imagine planting bamboo seedlings. You water diligently, maintain proper care, observe vigilantly, yet weeks pass without visible development. Months elapse, still nothing appears. Years continue passing, not single leaf emerges. Most would conclude the plant died, that efforts were wasted, that continuing seems pointless. But beneath soil, invisible to observers, roots continually strengthen, preparing for extraordinary growth. Then suddenly, just when all seems perpetually static, bamboo breaks through surface and begins growing. It doesn't grow incrementally, within weeks, it can reach 30 meters skyward. This exemplifies patience's function. This should guide your approach. Sometimes efforts appear futile, progress seems non-existent, stagnation feels permanent. But unseen to others, internal strengthening occurs. If persistence continues, when least expected, everything transforms. Unfortunately, our contemporary challenge involves immediate gratification mentality. We crave instant results, immediate rewards. When these fail to materialize, we abandon efforts. Consider individuals beginning dietary changes Monday morning, convinced that finally success awaits. By Wednesday afternoon, they obsessively check scales hourly, hoping for miraculous transformation. By Friday, seeing unremarkable results, they declare this approach fails, and by Saturday evening they're consuming family-sized pizzas with additional toppings and dessert included. Thus the cycle repeats endlessly with each subsequent Monday. What would Marcus Aurelius advise such individuals? Perhaps, nothing truly magnificent materializes instantaneously, not grapes, not figs. All require appropriate timing. His meaning? Everything valuable requires specific processes. You cannot force growth, cannot accelerate success. Your only option involves consistency and trusting that present actions, despite invisible immediate results, eventually deliver desired outcomes. Now imagine confronting genuinely difficult circumstances, perhaps serious health challenges. Such situations aren't resolved overnight, recovery might require months or years. Under such conditions, patience becomes not merely good advice but absolute necessity. If hope diminishes, if halfway abandonment occurs because immediate progress remains invisible, you deprive yourself of healing possibilities. How might patience be practiced daily to develop unbreakable character? Begin with small daily exercises. Consider examples: wait additional 5 minutes before checking mobile devices, walk without rushing, allow traffic signals to change without honking horns. These represent minor matters but train waiting tolerance. Remember that anything truly worthwhile never materializes overnight. Consider important aspects of your life. Were they achieved within single days? Certainly not. Significant accomplishments require time, effort, and consistent application. When impatience emerges, employ visualization. Picture long-term outcomes. Abandonment today eliminates future results, but persistence eventually produces retrospective gratitude for continued effort. So tell me, if life's most valuable aspects require patience, what personal goals haven't yet shown visible results? What challenges are currently testing your patience? Those mastering waiting without breaking become individuals that nothing and no one can stop. Learn celebrating amidst storms. My friend, life isn't about awaiting storm cessation but learning appreciation of rainfall, because whether desired or not, storms inevitably arrive. Gray days remain unavoidable. If each appearance triggers paralysis, concealment, or frustration, significant portions of existence will be spent awaiting sunshine that doesn't always appear when needed. Observe wildlife. Does the Arctic fox cease hunting during blizzards? Does the eagle wait for clear skies before seeking sustenance? Certainly not. They continue because they understand that cessation means non-survival. You possess far greater strength than currently acknowledged. But demonstrating this requires learning forward movement despite imperfect conditions. We experience frustration regarding trivial matters without conscious awareness. You prepare breakfast calmly when suddenly, toast falls floorward, inevitably landing butter side down. Suddenly your entire day seems ruined from commencement. Or you visit markets with meticulously organized shopping lists, only to discover that precisely the ingredient most crucial for your recipe remains unavailable. Naturally, substitution seems impossible because mentally you've already visualized the perfect outcome, and modifications would destroy everything. Or worse, you arrive at theaters excitedly anticipating films, but nearby audience members have apparently mistaken entertainment venues for operatic performance spaces. Now you spend more time annoyed than enjoying the entertainment you came to experience. Truth is, typically it's not external circumstances making days difficult but our choosing to let minor inconveniences create disproportionate disturbances. Why not embrace greater laughter? It's relatively simple. Consider Epictetus's wisdom: we cannot select circumstances but can choose attitudes toward them. How might this apply practically? You cannot prevent toast falling, but you determine whether frustration follows or simply making replacements. You cannot control market inventories, but you control responses to unavailability. The key isn't what happens but how you interpret events. Let's practice implementation in real situations. Imagine planning first dates. Days spent in preparation, selecting perfect venues, even mentally rehearsing conversations ensuring smooth interactions. Upon arrival, you discover restaurants closed for renovations. Improvisation leads to nearby establishments, but upon seating, you notice sauce stains adorning your shirt throughout the encounter. Departing later, passing vehicles splash through puddles, leaving you drenched entirely. Two options present themselves: become angry, declare catastrophic failures, allow complete mood destruction, or implement radically different approaches: laughter. Yes, genuinely laugh at circumstances because life occasionally resembles comedy. The mental image of napkin-dabbing shirt stains while attempting concealment, then experiencing complete drenching from roadside puddles belongs in cinematic depictions. Consider this: which elements will companions remember more significantly, your misfortune or your handling methods involving humor? Ultimately, responses to unexpected situations reveal more about character than any rehearsed conversations. Another effective strategy: replace complaints with confidence. Yes, nothing proceeded according to plans, but significance doesn't lie with restaurants, clean garments, or weather cooperation. Significance lies in interpersonal connections, present moment enjoyment. If life teaches singular lessons, it's that superior stories rarely emerge from perfect plans but from unexpected developments. Rather than thinking, "What disasters," consider, "What magnificent stories for future sharing." Control remains impossible regarding everything, but learning celebration amidst rainfall remains achievable. Life isn't about avoiding puddles but learning traversal without losing smiles. Perhaps that seemingly ruined date eventually becomes life's most memorable encounter. Discomfort represents greatness's price. Be honest, how frequently have you avoided activities solely because discomfort seemed inevitable? Perhaps fitness routines appealed conceptually, but awkwardness anticipation in gymnasium environments prevented participation. Or perhaps speaking during important meetings appealed until performance anxiety silenced contributions. Strangely, the more discomfort avoidance occurs, the larger accompanying fears become. Let me share Sebastian's story, a friend battling social anxiety throughout years. During adolescence, it began with minor manifestations. Classroom speaking created nervousness, so avoidance commenced. Then participation ceased even when answers were known. Eventually social gathering invitations were declined because large group interactions created stress. But did discomfort disappear? No, it intensified. University attendance brought worsening conditions. Classroom presentations became nightmarish experiences, so course selection focused on avoiding public speaking requirements. During breaks, isolation became preferable, with mobile devices providing social interaction excuses. Party invitations received fabricated declining reasons. He convinced himself this approach created greater safety, that isolation provided security. But that safe space eventually transformed into psychological prison. Days passed while his world contracted increasingly. Telephone calls became avoided, store entries created anxiety. The discomfort initially escaped had transformed into controlling monsters. Until transformation occurred, job interview opportunities materialized for positions he genuinely desired. But paralyzing anxiety threatened participation. Cancellation thoughts emerged, excuse fabrication seemed tempting, but instead he consulted psychological professionals. Together they developed strategies enabling interview attendance. Trembling occurred, heart rates accelerated, ridiculous statement fears persisted, but participation occurred nevertheless. Upon departure, realization struck: the fear had significantly magnified within imagination compared with reality. From that day forward, he began challenging himself incrementally. Small things previously avoided became tackled: ordering coffee without rehearsing statements repeatedly, classroom participation without excessive concern regarding others' perceptions, accepting invitations without generating excuses. With each minor victory, discomfort lost its power. Sebastian realized avoiding discomfort hadn't strengthened him but fractured his confidence. Facing challenges incrementally revealed that overcoming even difficult moments remained possible. How many opportunities have slipped beyond your grasp simply because discomfort avoidance seemed preferable? Neuroscientist Andrew Huberman explains that properly managed discomfort strengthens neural pathways. He discusses fascinating research regarding cold water immersion therapy. Why do individuals willingly enter freezing waters? Because training oneself tolerating small discomforts builds mental resilience. If breathing control remains possible in 4 degrees Celsius water, emotional regulation during difficult life situations becomes similarly manageable. Epictetus, were he alive today, would likely practice such techniques daily, understanding that comfort weakens resilience. He expressed plainly, difficulties strengthen minds just as physical labor strengthens bodies. How might discomfort tolerance be trained for handling life's toughest moments? Trust me, it's less complicated than appearances suggest, particularly with incremental approaches. First, expose mind and body to minor discomforts daily. Extreme measures like icy lake immersion aren't immediately necessary. Begin with simple adjustments. If coffee always includes sugar, try without. If sleeping arrangements involve multiple pillows, try singular ones. If public speaking creates terror, begin with small group discussions. Second, face challenges rather than avoiding them. Perpetual discomfort avoidance prevents strength development. If meeting invitations trigger panic, resist immediate rejection. Pause, reconsider, grant yourself opportunities demonstrating capability. Remember always, discomfort remains temporary while growth becomes permanent. Initial muscle training creates soreness, but strength eventually develops. Identical processes occur mentally. Each comfort zone departure prepares for greater future challenges. Here's your challenge: step beyond comfort zones today. Not tomorrow, not next week, but today. Do something typically generating discomfort, something usually avoided. Discomfort represents greatness's price, and only those learning payment methods become unstoppable. My friend, what follows changes everything. It could determine differences between surrender and persistence, between fracturing and becoming unbreakable. Listen carefully because this truly defines potential achievement boundaries. Your mind commands, your body obeys. 48 hours of continuous running without rest, 2 complete days non-stop with deteriorating muscles, bleeding feet, and mental screaming demanding cessation. That precisely describes Viktor Romanov's experience when deciding to complete 200 kilometers ultramarathons without specific preparation. Halfway through, physical exhaustion became so severe that collapse occurred. But upon regaining consciousness, rather than surrendering to exhaustion, Viktor made a profound decision. He would finish what he started. Despite his body's desperate pleas to stop, he stood up, steadied himself, and continued forward. One step, then another. His mantra became simple: my mind commands, my body obeys. When pain screamed through every fiber of his being, when rational thought insisted further progress was impossible, Viktor focused on this fundamental truth: his body would continue if his mind remained resolute. Each kilometer became a battle not against the terrain but against his own limitations. Fellow runners watched in disbelief as this man, clearly suffering beyond measure, refused to yield. When asked later how he continued despite such obvious physical deterioration, Viktor simply responded, "I decided stopping wasn't an option." This exemplifies the Stoic understanding that physical limitations often exist primarily in our minds. As Epictetus taught, first say to yourself what you would be, then do what you have to do. When facing life's greatest challenges, remember that your body can endure far more than you believe possible. The true battle occurs within your thoughts. Master your mind, and external circumstances lose their power over you. This is how you become truly unbreakable, not by avoiding difficulty, but by cultivating an inner fortress that remains steadfast regardless of external storms. You already possess everything required to overcome life's harshest moments. The question remains, will you command your mind to persevere when everything within you screams to surrender? The path to becoming indestructible begins with this simple truth: you are far stronger than you realize. Now go forward and demonstrate that strength to the world.